Okay, so this little video I'd like to focus on the theme of ambition in Macbeth. Okay, scenes I'll focus on: Act 1, Scene 3, Act 1, Scene 4, Act 1, Scene 7, Act 4, Scene 1. As ever, you can pause the video. There'll be a lot of information on the slides in this PowerPoint. Pause the video as and when you decide, and I'll try and not talk too much. Okay, so as with all the little videos, I first jot down what does ambition mean. So a definition, well, I checked the old dictionary, and a strong desire to do or achieve something. The other definition, desire and determination to achieve success. Strong desire to do or achieve something, well, that rings true for two characters in particular, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Desire and determination to achieve success, again, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. At what cost? What were they prepared to sacrifice in order to achieve this success? Well, we'll have a look at that. I mean, you've got your own ideas, I'm sure, already. What about Banquo? Could we apply this theme to Banquo? Remember, he demanded of the witches that they make some prophecy for him as well. He says, well, you're speaking to Macbeth, why not speak to me? Tell me about my future. And what do they tell him? They tell him that he won't be king, but that his descendants will be king. That's a key point in the play because it sets Macbeth and Banquo at odds with each other. Macbeth now sees Banquo as a potential threat. Why doesn't Banquo speak up when he suspects Macbeth has played foully in the murder of Duncan, the killing of Duncan? Well, because he wants to wait. He wants to wait and see how it plays out because he has ambition for his own family as well. So we'll have a look at those areas. Okay. So first of all, Macbeth. Macbeth's ambition has been described as his fatal flaw. That's also known as hamartia or hamartia. Luckily, we don't have to pronounce it in the exam. Just know how to spell it. It's high-end terminology there. Okay, Macbeth's ambition has been described as his fatal flaw. What's his fatal flaw, or what is a fatal flaw? Well, it's the one aspect of his character that brings about his downfall. The thing that makes him a tragic hero. Macbeth, remember, is introduced to us as a loyal, brave, fierce, respected Scottish soldier, rewarded by the king for winning the battle against Norway. So if he hasn't played foully for his promotions from Thane of Glamis to Thane of Cawdor, and he even says himself at some point in the play that if he does nothing, he may well become king naturally because Duncan has said he's begun to plant him. In other words, he wants to reward him. He wants him to be ambitious. He wants to reward him for his loyalty and his bravery on the battlefield. But Macbeth's ambition is overwhelming to Macbeth himself, and it prompts him to act. He becomes greedy for power, and he's not prepared to wait. He's impatient. Okay, so he's burning desire to become king, to have all the power. At the start of the play, he reveals concerns about having to kill Duncan to achieve this ambition, which is where Lady Macbeth comes in. So Macbeth knows that killing Duncan is an evil, wrong thing to do. But Lady Macbeth does manage to persuade him that actually it's the best solution to their problem of when will they become king and queen. Okay. Moving on to Lady Macbeth, although acknowledging that he does have ambition, she fears that her husband is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. And so sets about convincing him that killing Duncan is the only way for him to become king. It's an interesting perspective Lady Macbeth has on her husband, that she thinks he's too full of kindness to be able to kill Duncan, lacks the determination or the desire or the callous nature to actually kill Duncan. So what does she do? Well, she calls on the spirits to take away her femininity, make her more like a man, more able to commit murder. She acts as the catalyst. She drives the narrative. Without her, would Macbeth have committed regicide? Regicide is obviously the killing of a king, going against the divine law, divine right of kings. Apologies. Which the Elizabethan audience believed that the king was God appointed, that it was a natural line of descendancy, a bloodline that would become king after king, and anything that would disrupt that was going against God and going against nature, going against the divine right of kings. And that's what Macbeth, and Macbeth's very aware, he's acutely aware that any act that results in the death of Duncan would be unnatural and against God. But Lady Macbeth is very ambitious for her husband, but does she ever talk about her own ambition? So she talks about him becoming king. Does she talk about what she wants? We'll explore that also. And finally, the third one, Banquo. Banquo is not without ambition himself, as I've kind of explored earlier. He was witness to Macbeth's meeting with the witches, and so suspects that he did place most foully to become king. However, he chooses to remain silent because he takes the view that if the witch's prophecy for Macbeth came true, then so too may they not be my oracles as well, and his children may become king. So there's a certain responsibility lies at the doorstep of Banquo in the events that transpire. He could have spoken up. He could have alerted people to his suspicions that Macbeth killed Duncan, but he chose silence instead, and he ultimately paid with his life. Okay, so we'll go a couple of screens of quotations. Make a note of these. Obviously, recording it. I'll explain. I'll give an explanation for the quotations as we go as well. So, in relation to ambition, it's impossible to. Your literature exam is like a memory test. It's impossible to remember, 20, 30 quotations. So I've just selected 3 or 4 that you can, and out of them you can pick 1 or 2 and keep it linked with ambition. Okay, if chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. I have begun to plant thee, and will labour to make thee full of growing. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. Okay, so we've got Macbeth here with the first and the third one, and King Duncan with the middle one. If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. So Macbeth wonders that perhaps he may become king even if he doesn't do anything. After all, he's just been promoted to Thane of Cawdor. Again, his fatal flaw is Hamartia, his ambition, his greed and impatience prevent him from waiting. Duncan promises to reward Macbeth for his loyalty. I've begun to plant thee, and will labour, I'll do what I can, to make thee full of growing, to reward your ambition, to give you future promotions perhaps. So it underlines that ambition is an important theme under King Duncan's reign. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. This links ambition with deception. So appearance and reality. Don't let people see what you're secretly thinking. Macbeth has agreed to kill the king and now sets about fooling everyone into thinking he's a loyal subject instead, which is what they believe anyway. They don't suspect that Macbeth, initially anyway, they don't suspect that Macbeth is capable of killing King Duncan. People believe that it was one of his 2 sons who had a role to play in their father's death. Next screen of quotations. There is none but he whose being I do fear. We have scorched the snake, not killed it. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife, and be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. Okay, so linking these to ambition, is it all spoken by Macbeth? There is none but he whose being I do fear. Now, again, I mentioned that once the witches prophesies for Banquo also, it sets Banquo and Macbeth at odds against each other. So here, Macbeth is expressing concerns about Banquo. He wants to remain in power. He's king at this point, but he wants to remain as king. And so therefore, the one person he fears, because the witches said that Banquo's children will become kings, the one person he fears above all others is Banquo. So he decides to have Banquo and Banquo's son Flaance murdered. Banquo is successfully killed, but unfortunately for Macbeth, Flaance escapes. Which is why he then goes on to say, we have scorched the snake, not killed it. So his fear and paranoia grow surrounding Banquo and his failed attempts to kill his son. And as a consequence of that, as a consequence of his ambition, a mind is plagued by doubt and paranoia. Full of scorpions is my mind. Is he really any happier now that he has fulfilled his ambition to be king? He was perfectly happy when we met him at the start of the play. He was celebrating and celebrated as a hero. He had a close, loving relationship with his wife. He had a close, loving relationship with his wife, who now he's not even discussing his innermost thoughts with. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. Whereas for the murder of Macbeth, he had to rely on her heavily. So the murder of Duncan, he had to rely on her heavily. Now he's planned the murder of Banquo, and he tells her to be innocent of the knowledge. Dearest Chuck, a further link between ambition and deception, but this also reflects the growing distance between husband and wife. Macbeth no longer shares his thoughts and plans with Lady Macbeth. So, consequence of ambition. Oh, two more quotations here. Not in the legions of horrid hell can come a devil more damned in evils to stop Macbeth. We've got alliteration here, horrid hell and a devil more damned. I have supped full with horrors, direness, familiar to my slaughterous thoughts, cannot once start me. Okay, so Macduff describing Macbeth and what he has become. Compare this to how revered Macbeth was by everyone at the start for his loyalty and courage on the battlefield as a consequence of Macbeth acting on his ambition by killing Duncan. I've supped full with horrors, very gothic imagery. Direness, familiar to my slaughterous thoughts, very violent imagery. Macbeth has become so immune to horrific violence that nothing now can shock him. Again, the consequences of his own ambition laid out bare for all to see. His own death followed soon. So was his ambition beneficial to him in any way, or to Scotland in any way? Well, I think it's clear the answer is no. Before we move on to the scenes, a word about context. Why was it considered the most heinous of crimes to kill a king? Well, I've laboured to this point earlier. People in the Jacobean era believed in the divine right of kings. They believed that the king was God appointed and you could only become king if you were the next in line. By killing the king, Macbeth has gone against God's will and disrupted the natural order. That there is imagery throughout the play where horses eat each other and small birds kill larger birds of prey, and you'll notice that there's a prevalence of thunder and lightning and darkness. No reference to fair weather, usually just foul weather. Okay, and that's all linked to the consequences of Macbeth killing the king. Macbeth wrote this play with James I in mind. So once we observe Duncan being murdered, we know that the inevitable outcome for Macbeth and Lady Macbeth is death. This was designed to warn people at the time not to even think about an attempt on James's life. Remember, the failed gunpowder plot took place the previous year in 1605, in which Guy Fawkes attempted to take the life of James I. So this was very relevant and pertinent to James I and the Jacobean audience at that time. Okay, right, so that's the first scene. I hope you can see this. Maybe pause it and enlarge the screen. Okay, Act 1, Scene 3. This is our first sight of Macbeth as he's greeted by the witches. So I'm not going to read through the scene, it's there for you to see, but I have made copious notes on it. Let me get them all up, and hopefully did it? Made a mistake. No, back again. Right. If you've watched a few of these videos, you'll be used to my over-enthusiastic fingers tapping away on the keyboard. Okay, so I've made 3 observations on this. First of all, Banquo observes a strange reaction in Macbeth, almost as if he has been caught off guard, a guilty conscience perhaps. This bit here, good sir, why do you start? So why do you suddenly step back and think, and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? So Macbeth is looking troubled. Remember, I just mentioned false face must hide what the false heart doth know. Lady Macbeth says to him, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. So look like the innocent flower. Your facade, your facial expression should be happy. Don't reveal, let them not give away what you're secretly thinking. But here, he's taken by surprise by the witches, and Banquo's noticed this, and he observes it. Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that sound so fair? Okay, the next point, Banquo too has his own ambitions. He's keen to see what they say about his own future. So here he commands the spirit, speak then to me. Okay, talk to me. Let me know what's in my future. Okay, and the final point on this scene, full of imperative language. Macbeth demands to know more. As the witches have provoked his deepest and darkest desires, he needs to know how they have come about these predictions. He's clearly excited. There's a whole mix of questions and demands emphasise this. At the prospect of these dreams of his to become king coming true. Okay, so he's excited. He has this ambition. He's harbouring these dark desires. He's not shared them with anybody bar Lady Macbeth, presumably. And yet the witches seem to have an inkling as to what he's thinking, and he can't. He's startled by this, and he can't hide his initial response. And Banquo observes it. Acts 4. Let me not go too far now. One more. Right. Okay. So here we got Macbeth. Now Duncan has just announced that he's going to step down from king. He's going to retire, if you like, and he's announced his successor. And his successor is his eldest son, Malcolm, who's known as the Prince of Cumberland. He announces this in front of everybody. Now, of course, Macbeth wants to become the next king. So this is an aside. It's key there, a little stage direction. An aside. So it lets the audience know these are Macbeth's private thoughts. They're not shared with other characters on stage. They're for us, the audience. Okay? This implies he'd already planned to kill Duncan, but now he must also kill Malcolm if he's to fulfill his ambition. So the Prince of Cumberland, that is a step on which I must fall down or else overleap. In my way it lies. Here again, stars hide your fires, let not light see my dark and deep desires. He understands that what he's thinking and planning is wrong. It's against God, as we've discussed. And he's instructing the heavens to cover up his murderous intentions, or at least to turn a blind eye. He's asking that the eye doesn't see what the hand is doing, which could imply he doesn't want his conscience to get in the way and prevent him from committing this deed. So he knows the evil, heinous nature of the act he's planning or about to commit. And he doesn't want God to know. He doesn't even want his conscience to get in the way. Okay. And we've got direct reference to his ambition here. Overleap, deep desires, step on the path to becoming king. Okay, so that's a significant little aside from Macbeth that reveals a lot about his private thoughts. Okay, this scene, Act 1, Scene 7. Not quite sure why they're using the side there. Ignore that. This is Macbeth. Let me get this. Right, I think that might be the last one of them. Okay, if it were done when it is done, then 'twere well, it were done quickly. He's keen to get the deed over and done with. As the sooner it occurs, the sooner he is king, and the less turmoil he has to go through in planning, in thinking about it. He is, though, racked with doubt. His conscience at this point still has a voice. So he's going through here. This is a soliloquy where he's, again, for the audience's benefit, he's going through all the reasons why he should not kill the king. First, I'm his kinsman, I'm his cousin, and his subject. I'm loyal to him. I've proven my value and loyalty to him on the battlefield. I've risked my life to win countless fights, and the most recent against Norway. I'm his host, so he's here as my guest. He's staying with me as my guest. I should be against his murderer, shut the door, not bear the knife myself. And even further, he goes further. He says, but Duncan's actually been really nice. He's been fair and kind as a king. He's been great to me. He's promoted me to Thane of Cawdor. I shouldn't kill him. Okay, so he knows what he's planning is wrong, even offering up solid reasons against the deed, let alone the act of going against God and nature by committing regicide. Okay, then I've no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other side. So this is a direct reference to his own ambition and how he admits that apart from his ambition, he has no justification to kill Duncan. So it's just his ambition. The metaphor refers to horses and horsemanship and suggests an inexperienced rider who tries to vault onto a horse, but he goes right over the saddle and falls in a heap on the ground. As far as this relates to Macbeth's ambition, he is foreseeing that it will be a serious mistake to murder Duncan because he has no excuse for doing so, and this misdeed could lead to his own ruin. He's fully aware of the consequences of his actions, but because of his hamartia, his fatal flaw, this ambition, it overwhelms him. He's powerless to prevent this course of action, killing Duncan. But at this point in the play, he says, I'm settled. But after some effective coercing from his wife, his burning ambition to become king sees him do away with all reason and commit to the deed. Okay, I'm settled and bent. So Lady Macbeth has intervened, and she's attacked his masculinity, his manhood, his bravery. She's threatened to withdraw her love from him. She's called him weak, a coward. All designed to get him to change his mind and decide to kill the king. And it works. Okay, but after some effective coercing from his wife, his burning ambition to become king sees him do away with all reason and commit to the deed. Does it work because he secretly wants it to work? Or does it work because she is actually very manipulative and powerful? Now, that's for you to decide at this juncture. Okay, in the final scene we'll look at a selection of quotes from this Act 4, Scene 1, sorry. Okay, Macbeth has come to the witches looking for reassurance, but they continue to speak in riddles and half-truths, leaving Macbeth to draw his own conclusions. At no point do the witches tell him to do anything. That's on him. He interprets what they say, and they are deliberately evasive and speak in riddles, and ambiguity, unclearness, lack of clarity in what they say. So though bladed corn be lodged and trees blow down, though castles topple on the warders' heads. See how nature's been unsettled? This is a consequence of ambition. Be bloody bold and resolute. Nice rule of 3 there. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. So we've got alliteration, rule of 3, highlighting how this is the witches, highlighting how Macbeth has been played by the witches and their riddles. His desire to remain king means he is unable or unwilling to challenge the veracity, the truth of the witches' words. No man born of woman can harm Macbeth. I mean, that's pretty clear. He's safe. But then they tell him to beware Macduff. Ambiguity, mixed messages. Obviously, we learn later on that Macduff was born by caesarean section, so not a natural birth. And that's them playing on words. That's their riddles. They're manipulating him. Now, Macbeth is aware of this. He says to them, and damned all those that trust them. Wow, so he's saying damned is anybody who believes a word the witches say. And yet here he is, believing the words the witches say. You know, doesn't make much sense. But that's down to his ambition now to remain king, his thirst for power. So despite knowing he shouldn't trust the witches, his own paranoia and desire to remain king overrides any sense that he may have. The castle of Macduff I will surprise, seize upon Fife, give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes, and all the unfortunate souls. So this is him deciding to act. At no point did the witches say kill Macduff and his family, but Macbeth has decided to interpret the witches' words in such a way that he sees this as a legitimate course of action. Here we see how his ambition has turned him into a monster, whereas before he weighed up the necessity for murder. Remember, he's deciding whether or not to kill Duncan. Now he's promising to kill innocent women and children for no reason at all. I mean, if we haven't already, at this point, we absolutely lose all sympathy for him. That's the tragic hero towards his inevitable decline and death. It needn't have been like this. But because of his ambition, his fatal flaw, this is what's happened. Okay, so just a summary. Unchecked ambition. Macbeth's driving ambition was his desire for power. This power, once achieved, not only filled him with guilt and paranoia, but corrupted him to his core as he set out on a path of dire destruction that involved the murder of innocent women and children. Okay? Rather than act as some sort of moral compass for her husband, Lady Macbeth instead encouraged and persuaded him to kill Duncan to fulfill his ambition. Now, how did that work out for the pair of them? They had a very close, intimate relationship at the start. But the distance was vast between them. Remember Macbeth's reaction to the news that his wife was dead. It should have happened hereafter. In other words, maybe it was an inconvenience, or possibly that, well, we've all got to die sometime. He was unmoved, very cold. We don't see them on stage together very much after the opening act, act and a half. Neither Macbeth nor Lady Macbeth are able to deal with the moral implications of their deeds, and both, in their own ways, descend into a frantic madness, culminating in Lady Macbeth's suicide and Macbeth's murder at the hands of Macduff. And again, linking back to the context and James I and the divine right of kings, once Macbeth killed Duncan, his fate was sealed, and he had to die, and Lady Macbeth had to die for her role in it also. Okay, so that's covered ambition, the theme of ambition. Lots of quotes, lots of things to go back over, and yeah, we'll see you next time for another little video. Cheers, guys.